Alright guys, I'm Gabe and we're going to look at health psychology. Our presentation is on the healthy life. So health psychology is influenced by the interconnection of our emotions, thoughts, and actions. Health psychology is a field devoted to understanding the connections between psychology and the healthy life, and health psychologists research stress, psychosocial factors related to health and disease, how to use psychology to improve health, and the role of psychology in medicine. So when looking at the textbook, the big point that stuck out to me was looking and seeing that chronic diseases are on the rise due to longer lifespans and unhealthy behaviors. Some behaviors that people are partaking in nowadays are like eating way too much, like fast food restaurants, and smoking. I made a connection to COVID-19 by looking at individuals who are health compromised are more likely to have severe consequences while contracting COVID-19. So this means that individuals who are partaking in those unhealthy behaviors are living longer, allowing them to have more severe side effects when they get COVID. Another key point I got from the textbook was looking at health psychologists. And so health psychologists help individuals adopt healthier behaviors. They reduce stress and they treat psychological disorders linked to poor health outcomes. Personally, I work with a sports psych, and I consider these as like health psychologists. They help you, for me, it's like dealing with anxiety before races, or also just like planning out things. There's a lot of power behind like planning out a race, whether it be like what you're going to do at mile 1 or mile 2, or whether like what you're doing the day before, getting to bed on time or eating well. Another example, or another key point is the biopsychosocial model of health was in the textbooks. It's embraced by health psychology and considers the interaction of biological, psychological, and social factors in the disease development. All these key components apply to someone's healthy life. So the connection I made to this, to COVID-19, is the virtual psych appointments were very big during COVID. Whether it be Zoom, so you can meet with your counselor or your sports psych remotely, this was very beneficial and impactful. So my first research article looked at multimorbidity, kind of a callback to the very first slide I had, where we looked at people who are living longer. Multimorbidity refers to coexistence of 2 or more chronic medical conditions within an individual. This idea challenges traditional healthcare and with the approach that you focus on treating one disease at a time. Multimorbidity is increasingly prevalent nowadays. Like I said, people are living longer, and it's big in aging populations. So like people with high blood pressure and obesity, it's getting hard to treat because like if you treat one thing, you may be neglecting the other, and honestly it's not benefiting the health of the patient. So factors that contribute to multimorbidity include aging, lifestyle choices, social economic status, and advances in medical care. People are living longer nowadays. We got medicine. We're curing diseases that we didn't really think there was cures for, and science is improving. In my second research article, I looked at telehealth. So calling back to my other slide where Zoom was important. This surge in telehealth has caused a lot of people to learn new technology, and it has caused tech companies to adapt and make their interfaces easier to use. You guys remember Skype? No, you don't remember Skype. Skype's dead. Zoom became big, Google Meet became big. It's all about this healthy competition within the tech world. Telehealth is also directly impacted by client-patient buy-in. So it's not going to be helpful if you as a patient or me reaching out to my sports psych, if we don't like the interface, it's not going to be beneficial. But if we both understand like this is how it's going to be, and we both find it like it actually works, it's going to be beneficial to us or me getting the most out of our time together. So patients' ability to communicate effectively impacts the success of telehealth. So if you're scared behind a phone and not willing to share, like it's not going to be worth your time. But it's something you got to get more comfortable with as times are changing. And so the last point I looked at was, at the end of the day, the patient is what makes telehealth boom in popularity. A lot of it was people didn't want to go leave their house or didn't really want to go out and risk getting sick or contracting COVID. So that idea definitely boomed the popularity. And honestly, like doctors and psychologists and other counselors found that it was just as efficient to do it remotely as it was in person. It saved the client 15 minutes drive to and from. It saved the psychologist could get more appointments in a day. There's a lot of efficiency behind telehealth. Also looking at doctors and psychologists wanted to put patients first during the pandemic, so this was a great way to make sure that people were staying safe and slow the spread of COVID.
Hey guys, my name's Austin, and today we'll be talking about stress and health. It is not just major life stressors like family death and natural disasters that increase the likelihood of getting sick. Even small daily hassles can cause stress. Even I go through this, right? And obviously we talked about this in the book. Doing something simple as chores or cleaning or getting homework assignment done. For some people that can be really, really stressful for them. For others, it can't be. And obviously other people are different, and people can obviously situate in different aspects of their life, but obviously small daily tasks like that can cause stress. Stress can alter your stress hormones and even suppress your immune system function. That's something I did not know. Obviously when you're a child and you stress about simple stuff like homework, you think it's the norm, but obviously once I've been starting to go in college and I've been seeing obviously a lot of my fellow classmates go through the same thing, it does affect your daily life. It affects your sleep, affects the way you go about your daily living, affects how you stay awake during class. So that's one of the things I realized about your immune system. The developed model of the stress response, called the general adaptation syndrome, focuses on 3-phase model of stress, including coping, exhaustion, and physiological resources. I feel like I go through this process a lot, and I see a lot of people go through this process. I have worked at Providence Health, and I worked at the ER, and I was a constant observer there, so I saw a lot of this happening, right? You saw a lot of people go through stress, you saw a lot of people cope in a different way, and you saw a lot of people exhausted, and they ended up sleeping, and they went through this process again, so you do see that in life a lot. The research article that I backed up with obviously my topic, stress and health, examining COVID-19 pandemic-related economic and household stress. In this study, 52% of young adults moved in with family during extended lockdowns, and sexual minority young adults were forced to return to unsupportive home environments while also losing connection to affirming social spaces. So for me and for a lot of people did feel kind of a social distance from others, obviously. 6 feet away, had to keep our distance, but that also affected being home more, and a lot of people did not like to be home and be around their family because they did come from bad environments, and they like to be with their friends. They like to kind of go away from that. So I think that's one thing that kind of affected stress and health, and obviously young adults. But yeah, I think that's one of the things I did want to focus on and kind of back that up with stress and health. My second article that I talked about was Applied Cognitive Science in South Africa. It talked about South Africans and how there's a long history of systematic violence. The murder rate in South Africa is over 40 per 100,000 people and 132 per 100,000 in America. So if you do the math on that, it's not really good. And if you talk about the murder rate in the United States, that's what I was talking about. Murder rate in the United States is 8 per 100,000 people, and murder rate in South Africa is 40 per 100,000 people. So it's not really good. And physically, the actions of these horrific events can be horrible for our mental health. It also talks about the rape rate in South Africa, and it is not really good compared to America. And that's one of the things that they want to focus on as well, is that can affect stress and our health and how kind of our anxiety can build upon that. The third article that I talked about was remote teaching. Obviously, we know Zoom as we know it now. And a lot of teachers did have to go through stress, whether it's going through lesson plans, whether it's controlling their class on Zoom and making sure they actually paid attention. Teachers didn't know that. So that was really stressful for them. So teachers felt unprepared for the use of technology when the pandemic occurred, as usual. And teachers with low professional efficiency tend to experience higher stress levels associated with their profession, leading to dropping out of the profession. Obviously, we need teachers, and this stress did not really help with the dropout rate, as a lot of teachers did move away and try to find new professions because they couldn't handle the COVID-19 pandemic and how that affected their careers. And I feel like teachers and even classmates, they struggled a lot with that. Obviously, as a student, I didn't really like Zoom. I thought class on Zoom was pretty easy. For others, they did like that in-person environment. They like to have social friends and have that kind of environment around them to support them. But yeah, overall though, stress and health was a big impact in obviously our healthy life and how it can be a big contributor overall in the future. Thank you guys.
So after Gabe talking about what health psychology is and Austin talking about stress and how we can get it, I'm going to talk about how we can protect our health. The first thing is coping. There are two different kinds of coping strategies. The first is emotion-focused coping, which just regulates the emotion or stress that you're feeling. These are more short-term. These are things such as breathing exercises or distractions, such as watching a movie instead of thinking about the actual problem that is causing you the stress. These things, although they may seem beneficial at the time, they actually aren't helping you in the long run, and that's where problem-focused coping comes in. These address the actual event that caused you the stress. So say you're stressed about work and a coworker that you work with that's upsetting you. Emotion-focused coping would be going home and simply not thinking about work, watching a movie, just distracting yourself from the problem. But problem-focused coping would be addressing the coworker and the issue at hand. This would solve the problem long-term and overall end the stress that you're feeling. Emotion-focused coping can easily turn into problem-focused coping if you do it long enough, such as meditation or breathing problems. If they're scheduled and regular and that actually helps you get over the issue that's causing you stress, that is very beneficial. From COVID, we learned that it's increasing your stress. So everything about COVID made people a little more freaked out and a little more unsure about what was going on in their life. This caused their stress to go up and therefore their need to find coping strategies. So as we learned in class, what we hear and what we see will influence our behavior. This means what we see on the media, such as calming information, can have a higher association with healthy behaviors when compared to showing alarming information. The best way to cope with stress is to believe that you have control over the situation, meaning that you may have a way to fix it, which is why the coping strategies are so important. If you feel like counseling is a helpful, beneficial way for you to cope, then that would be a problem-focused solution that would allow you to have more control over the situation. So although COVID was unpredictable and maybe your work schedule was ruined, maybe your social life or scheduled events you may have had might not be there, you can always find something else maybe at home. In terms of social relationships, this was probably the biggest thing that was damaged during COVID. People weren't able to go out and socialize, and there was less social support and external motivation. Meaning people outside of yourself or your household weren't able to motivate you to go outside and say exercise or find a way to deal with your stress. There's also cultural influences from your community, like sports communities. There's a huge deal of fans going to sporting events, which not only encourage the athletes, but also allows people to get outside of their house and find a healthy way to express their stress. With this, there's a video about how the athletes in the world said that they were affected by the lack of fans watching their games and how this led them to feel more stressed. So this not only affected the fans, but also affected the athletes. In terms of personality types, type A personalities are more likely to develop illnesses and carry more stress. A type A personality is someone who's hostile, competitive, and impatient. This actually physiologically damages arteries of your heart and lacks protection in social support networks. So more positive emotions have led to the likelihood of developing less illnesses and help stress. Optimism can improve your coping, reduce your stress, and can predict better disease outcomes. Meaning if you have a more positive outlook on it, you might have a more positive outcome. Lastly, for how to cope with your stress, we're going to talk about how you can increase at-home practices. So as I mentioned, scheduled meditation or breathing exercises can be very beneficial to stress and find an easy way to express yourself. Wider education about mental health and treatment options have been shown due to COVID, meaning that COVID realized and recognized the increase in stress and therefore increased the resources and availability to resources. So studies have shown that brief self-guided stress management intervention can be effective in reducing stress among college students who are maybe among the most affected by COVID.
Hey everybody, I'm Alden. I'm here to continue our presentation on the healthy life. For starters, we're going to start with health practices and just talk about some definitions like health behaviors and health habits. The difference is important, and so you should note that here for the rest of the presentation. Health behaviors are just any behaviors that can improve or harm your health. So examples of this might be any regular exercise, flossing, wearing sunscreen, one or many times. Either way, it's going to be a health behavior. Negative examples would be drunk driving or drinking at all, and then pulling all-nighters and smoking. Obviously, a lot of those are extreme examples, and there are examples in our daily lives that all of us do. Health habits are when these behaviors are firmly established and become routine or automatic. They're not always, but they're often due to how we were raised or what circles we were in when we were children, so it's not the easiest to establish new habits, and that is why we see so many health consequences today. The reason why this matters is because studies have shown countless times, especially during COVID, that engaging in more of these positive health habits, that it reduces many negative impacts on our lives. So some examples are reduced illness, felt subjectively better, meaning happier, lower death likelihood. How they tested that in several studies was looking at the return rate and the amount of deaths comparing those who reported being extremely stressed and those who did not report being extremely stressed, meaning that those that reported being extremely stressed were more likely to come back to the study being deceased, or they were reported deceased more frequently than those that weren't stressed. Anyway, improved academic performance, etc. This is something to note. Additionally, health habits have a greater effect during times of stress. This is very important for us to consider in terms of our project subject with COVID-19. But just for starters, not talking about COVID-19, an applicable example is during an exam period, students are engaged in more negative health practices, such as smoking or drinking or doing anything to cope, as well as not exercising regularly. Sometimes your routines go out the window, and this makes you vulnerable to a lot of these negative health consequences, especially reduced illness due to your compromised immune system that we already talked about earlier in this presentation. So one study that I kind of mentioned earlier is that routine regularity during a global pandemic, the impact on mental health outcomes and influence on chronotype. Chronotype is just basically has to do with circadian rhythm and when your body naturally likes to go to sleep and when it likes to wake up. To carry out the study, they examined the association between habits and mental health during COVID-19 through surveys. Habits included sleep hygiene, physical exercise, and healthy eating habits. The data showed a negative association between routine regularity and anxiety and depressive symptoms. Seems pretty obvious or pretty simple, but to reiterate, the more routine, healthy habits that you had, the less likely you are to have some severe anxiety and depression. So we can conclude conclude the study with saying that healthy habits using these protective habits these healthy habits are protective factors against mental health, especially during times of stress like COVID-19. So further, during times other than a global pandemic, health psychologists are always doing research in ways to improve our health, just like routines did in COVID-19. So the two things they look for are how to change unhealthy behaviors and why individuals don't act in a healthy manner. And so a lot of that is behavior psychology. An application of this is health promotion, where you focus on behaviors that will improve future health and reduce risk of illness. All right. Another application, as you can see, we have a study here. Feel free to read that article if you wish. It's very interesting. It goes along the same point of the last study, that unhealthy habits during COVID negatively impacted mental health, but it goes further and talks about the lasting effects. So you may find that interesting. So we've learned that positive health habits significantly improve your life in a variety of ways and act as protective factors in stressful or unknown and difficult times, and you should do them all of the time. So to get started with this, it's not very quantifiable, but if you want to do anything about it, you should take an initiative now to see benefits of positive health habits over your entire life. Habits aren't easy to build because they've been cemented through growing up or your family and friend circles. So just to get started, some actions could be trying to get to bed earlier, exercise for 30 minutes a day, eat 3 meals a day, limit snacks, reduce processed foods, take once a day to reflect or journal. These seem like simple things, and you definitely shouldn't start with all of them because it's easy to abandon that routine. It's often more difficult than you think. Thank you for watching. All our sources are here if you'd like to check them out on our annotated bibliography in an APA format. Thank you.